Every ship has on board a log and a library. This is the Norton Boater's Log, in which mariners keep track of weather patterns and climate changes, barometer readings. In other words, every day provides a basic fund of information by which you constantly learn for the next day. The library is your fund of knowledge where you learn from the wisdom of the ancestors. Leadership Art number 11 is intellectual capital, the cultivation of a learning culture. Can your church become a learning culture?
All of us can learn to do more work in less time, with less effort, by practicing sound principles of how to study.
Media is not a zero-sum game. When you have a shift in media forms from performance culture to written culture, from written culture to print culture, from print culture now to screen culture, you don't lose the previous media form, you just gain a new one. In the last 20 years, the number of places where you can buy books has more than doubled. In the last 20 years, the number of libraries has increased by 17% to 37,000. 50 years ago, there were only 85,000 books in print in the U.S. Today, there are 1.3 million. 50 years ago, there were only 357 publishers. Today, there are 49,000. See, a media revolution doesn't lead to one media form being supplanted, only supplemented. In philosophical circles, there is something they call negative space. This is a concept in which you are defined as much by the void around you as by the substance of your being. Church, there's something called intellectual negative space, where we can be as determined as much by what we don't know, by the void around us, as by what we do know. How large is your intellectual negative space? In computer circles, there's something that is called Moore's Law that says that the microprocessing power doubles every 18 months. At the same time, it halves in price every 18 months. I have something I call Lens Law that says every 7 years, half of the information you know is no longer valid.
There's no excuse for this. All of you should have finished this assignment.
The word for disciple means student or learner. Disciples of Jesus are lifelong learners. We are always students. We are constantly learning, unlearning, and relearning, and being open to fresh surprises of the Spirit. The internet changes everything. In fact, if you're over 30, you're an immigrant to a new culture. If you're under 30, you're a native of it. But if you're over 30, it's like our ancestors who arrived at Ellis Island. We have a whole new language to learn. We have a whole new culture to explore. We have new habits and customs to understand. The world has come to an end. Deal with it, get over it, or get help. And part of getting help is being willing to constantly learn and to make your church into a learning culture.
All right, Kenneth. Suppose you tell us what natural resource the state of Massachusetts is most noted for.
Natural resources are...
I grew up in a lecture drill test, classroom-based learning mode. I'm now living in a culture where these are the first generations in history that do not need authority figures to access information. Now, hear me, I believe they need authority figures more than ever before to process information, but these generations born after 1964, they do not need authority figures to access the information. They get 1,000 different ways. So they're naturally self-directed learners. Silicon Valley will, I guarantee you, be a Rust Belt in 20 years if it does not stay in a learning mode. You see, the computers being built today are being built out of chemicals, molecules, DNA, whereas Silicon Valley is all based on silicon chips. The first man on the moon got there on 8 kilobytes of RAM. Your car has more microprocessing power than all the computers combined that got the first man on the moon. I have here 128 storage, and my next computer, how many terabytes? Information rich, but wisdom poor. We are better at faking reality than we are at fixing reality. We're better at creating fake realities like Zelda and Super Mario and Myst and Riven and Sim City than we are at fixing the sin cities that are out there filled with degradation, and poverty and abuse. The leadership art of intellectual capital must turn information into knowledge and into wisdom. Can your church wisdomize your community and your culture?
One of my favorite things to do in life is to go snorkeling. I love to don a mask and put the snorkel in my mouth and to skim the surface of the water, look at the luscious plant life and see the fish. But I have a son who's a scuba diver. In fact, he spent one summer working with the Jacques Cousteau team on the Fiji Islands, and his gear is a lot different than mine. And he laughs at me because he says, "Don't you want to plunge into the depths, Dad? Don't you want to do more than just look and to see what's there? Don't you want to actually feel these fish and touch the exotic plant life and see things that no one else has seen before?" There's a snorkeling spirituality and there's a scuba diving spirituality. What enables you to go from one to the other is this leadership art of intuition. As you sail on the ocean of life, naturally, intuition is the wind. As you sail on the ocean of life, supernaturally, the Holy Spirit is the wind. And when you bring intuition and the Holy Spirit together, you're able to go places and do things and experience God in ways that you never thought were possible.
One of my most prized possessions is a piece of fabric art I commissioned from two Ohio Mennonite folk artists known as the Smucker Sisters. I asked them to create for me a tapestry that would tell the story of early Methodism and what made it such a powerhouse for God and the gospel. I told them about how these early circuit riders were spiritual entrepreneurs, if you will, who played their hunches and went where the Spirit led them and ended up in forts and settlements and people's homes and with Native Americans, wherever the Spirit led. After the first settlers arrived, who was the first one to come but a circuit rider? I explained how these circuit riders carried with them and filled their saddlebags with the most cutting-edge hardware and software of the day, books, pamphlets, tracts. I also told of the old saying that the weather was so bad, the only thing that could possibly be out in these kinds of conditions were old crows and Methodist preachers. But what made these Methodist preachers so special, I said, was that they were known as praying people. And what made them such powerful preachers was that they spent a lot of time on their knees. Their intuition began with a downward motion where they literally prayed their way forward. In fact, more than one itinerant was found dead in terrible blizzards, but with knee prints in the snow and ice where they had frozen to death in the winter. The power of intuition is the power of prayer tapping into the currents of God's Spirit, leading you even sometimes in directions you do not wish to go.
Are the winds of God's Spirit blowing at your back, pushing you forward? Are you tacking into the winds of the culture? Can you feel the vibrations of what it means to live in the stream of God's Spirit? Have you come to the water? Have you hoisted the sails? Is the wind at your back? How do you know when you're maxed out in the winds of God's Spirit? When a boat like this has its sails unfurled and is totally maxed in the wind, there is a phenomenon, a physical phenomenon that is called planing. And when planing takes place, and literally the boat is going as fast as it can go, the winds are at its back, its sails are full mast, you hear a hum as the ship literally hydroplanes, lifts out of the water, and you know that you're maxed out in the wind when you hear that hum. Can you hear the hum in your life? Can you hear the hum in your church? Leaders transform the holy not into the humdrum, but into the hum. Hoist the sails, church. Trust the wind. Come to the water. Be an Aquachurch. A young naval ensign was completing his first overseas tour of duty when he was given the opportunity to showcase his skills at getting a ship underway in a timely fashion. With a stream of commands, he set the deck a-buzzing with sailors, and soon the ship was steaming into the channel. His efficiency set a record for getting a ship underway, and he was not surprised when a seaman came brandishing a note from the captain, but he was a little surprised it was a radio message, and he was even more surprised to read it. It read, "My personal congratulations at setting this record. You did it by the book and with amazing speed. But in your haste, you forgot one unwritten law of the sea. Make sure your captain is on board before you get underway." Is your captain on board?